that tracked the health of more than 28,000 people over the course of 40 years. It was named for Whitehall, citadel of the British civil service, where every job is ranked in a precise hierarchy. The perfect laboratory to determine whether in humans there might be a link between rank and stress.
I mean, that's the thing about stress. I think you've got to look at it in both acute terms and chronic terms. And I think I've been under chronic stress in this organisation simply because I'm a square peg in a round hole.
Kevin Brooks is a government lawyer. His rank, level 7, means he has little seniority in his department. He lives the life of a subordinate.
I think what I was most aware of at the time was the workload and how I had most of it under control, but one of my cases wasn't wholly under control. I'd let it slip. And it was a bit like, you know, being in a car and hitting an ice patch and skidding. But nonetheless, I came in Monday morning, and my immediate manager, let's call him Ben. Ben wants a word with you. So we find a room, he shuts the door, then he says, you know what you've done. You know what happened while you were away. We couldn't find one of your files. Do you know what that meant? He just gave me a darn good kicking, you know? Psychologically, he did me over. And at the end of it, it was more threats. It was, right, this may be a disciplinary matter. So I left the room, crossed over the corridor to my own room, and I just burst into tears and wept and wept.
Sarah Woodall also works for the government. Unlike Kevin, she is a senior civil servant.
There are about 160 people reporting to me ultimately, one way or another, within the sector. I do really enjoy working in the civil service. It's quite a dynamic environment. It can be quite exciting. I like working with lots of people. So yeah, I do really enjoy my job.
Such dramatically different reflections dramatize one of the most astounding scientific findings in the Whitehall study.
Firstly, it showed that the lower you were in the hierarchy, the higher your risk of heart disease and other diseases. So people second from the top had higher risk than those at the top. People third from the top had higher risk than those second from the top. And it ran all the way from top to bottom. We're dealing with people in stable jobs with no industrial exposures. And yet, your position in the hierarchy intimately related to your risk of disease and length of life.
I've been very lucky. I haven't ever experienced any problems with my health. Since I've been in the senior civil service, I haven't had a day off with ill health. So I've been very fortunate.
In my own situation, I think that my career is pretty much tainted. It's pretty much arrested because I've had, for instance, for the last 3 years at work, I've been off sick for probably half that time.
This particular study is sort of the Rosetta Stone of the whole field because it's the British civil service system. Everybody's got the same medical care. Everybody's got the same universal health care system, just like the baboons. All the baboons eat the same thing. They have the same level of activity. It's not the stuff that, oh, if you're a low-ranking baboon, you smoke too much and you drink too much, and if you're a low-ranking British civil service guy, you never go to the doctor and you don't get preventative vaccines. Both of these studies rule out all those confounds, and they produce virtually identical findings.
On both sides of the primate divide, there are soul-wrenching stories and life-threatening consequences. For every subordinate like Kevin living a life of baboon uncertainty, there is an alpha. Richmond, California, a town where society's extremes can be spotted right from your car. This is cardiologist Jeffrey Ritterman's regular commute.
You can learn a lot about the stress and health outcome just from the neighborhoods you visit. In this neighborhood, the life expectancy is quite good, and most of the people are pretty healthy. And as we reach the top of the hill, it gets to be a little bit less privileged. And as we make this transition, the social status begins to drop, and correspondingly, in those areas, the health outcome is much worse. And these people are not going to have the same life expectancy as the people in the middle-class area we started in. People are on guard, people are vigilant. They're living a more stressful life. This is a community that produces high stress hormones in people, and over time, it takes its toll.
One of Dr. Ritterman's patients is 65-year-old Emmanuel Johnson. His career? Guidance counselor in one of America's most dangerous neighborhoods.
Well, last year, I think we had 47 homicides. You know, in the last 4 days, we had 11 shootings, 3 deaths. And I just know 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a relative or someone that the kids know.
For Emmanuel Johnson, there is a price for chronic exposure to this stress.
5 years ago, I had a heart attack. I'm a diabetic, too. I have to work on it constantly. I've been in this business 20 years, so it's stressful, just working the job. So over the years, the cholesterol, the blood pressure, the sugar came on later, but the stress was always there long before they came on.
Emmanuel Johnson's body may be telling yet another story of stress. The Whitehall study in England found an incredible link between stress, your position in the social hierarchy, and how you put on weight.
So it may not be just putting on weight, but also the distribution of that weight. And the distribution of that weight, putting it on round the centre, is related to position in the hierarchy, and that in turn may be related to chronic stress pathways.
So we said, does that happen in monkeys? Because they organize themselves in a hierarchy too. And it turns out that it does. Subordinate monkeys are more likely to have fat in their abdomen than are dominant monkeys. I think the most amazing observation that I've made in my lab is this idea that stress could actually change the way you deposit fat on your body. To me, that was a bizarre idea that you could actually alter the way fat is distributed.
Sapolsky, Shively, and others think stress could be a critical factor in the global obesity epidemic. Even worse, fat brought on by stress is dangerous fat.
You know that fat carried on the trunk or actually inside the abdomen is much worse for you than fat carried elsewhere on the body. It behaves differently. It produces different kinds of hormones and chemicals and has different effects on your health. Whatever it is that works for an individual, they need to value stress reduction. I think the problem in our society is that we don't value stress reduction. We, in fact, value the opposite. We admire the person who not only multitasks and does 2 things at once, but does 5 things at once. We kind of admire that person.